We begin today the Gemara on Daf Yud Amud Beis, the last two lines on the Yamud, where the Gemara will continue discussing the Bezdin that decides when and how to be Ma'abed Shana, to add a month to the year. So there's a siman that the Gemara gives for the discussion here. There's different prices that are brought up on the subject. Ziman, Nasi, Tzarech, Gedi, Siman. That's the siman for the different details of this halacha. Okay, so the first brayse, Tan Rabbanan, we learned, Ein ma'abrenes hashana, you will not be ma'abed the year, Ela b'mezumanim la, unless you have 7 people, as Gemara before said, that according to one opinion of Rabban Gamliel, that you have 7 people that have to be ma'abed hashana. They have to be notified in advance and invited to come to sit in this discussion to be ma'abed the year. And the reason for this, as Mefarshim say, is because this is a serious matter. You have to be notified in advance that they're going to be part of that group of Chachamim that are going to sit together, so they can look into the subject. They can prepare themselves. Ma'aseh b'Rabban Gamliel. There was a story that happened with Rabban Gamliel. Sha'amar, that he said, Hashkimu li shiva la'aliyah, that 7 should come tomorrow with me into this second floor in a house to discuss this matter. So Hishkem, he came early next day there to join them, to discuss this matter, and he found that there were 8 that were there that were here to discuss this matter. So there was someone that was extra, wasn't supposed to be there. So Omar, he said, Mi hu sha'ala shalei b'rishos, who amongst you came here without being invited, without permission, yered, you should descend, you should go down. Only those that are supposed to be there b'rishos should remain. Amar Shmuel HaKatan v'Amar Shmuel HaKatan got up and said, it's I that came here without permission. And I didn't come here to join the 7 in order to decide regarding the year, to make the Ibriyar or not. I came here because I wanted to learn halacha l'maisa. I wanted to see how the discussion goes and to understand the halacha about this. Amaloi, Rabban Gamliel said to Shmuel HaKatan, Shev b'ni shev, sit, my son, sit. All years would be fit to be decided whether it should be an ibiyah or not just by you alone. That's how great you are. So you can remain here. Ela omru chachamim ein ma'abrin es hashana ela b'mzumanim la. But the chachamim said though that you can't decide on an ibiyah unless you have people that are coming that are invited to this in advance. Now the Gemara says about this, Shmuel HaKatan said that he was there and he was the one that's not invited. Now v'loi Shmuel HaKatan hava, really it wasn't Shmuel HaKatan that was not invited. He was invited to come. It was someone else that came that was extra. But machmas kisufe hu da'aved, because he didn't want that the one that wasn't invited to be embarrassed, therefore he said, it's me that wasn't invited. The Marsha asks on this Gemara, how could have he done this? Because if he's the one that was really invited, and there was someone else that wasn't, if he would have actually left, it would have came out that the 7 that remained had one amongst them that was not invited, and then they would have been discussing the matter, not the way it was supposed to, only with ones that are invited. And so there's one there that didn't make the proper preparations for this, and he can't be included. So therefore the Marsha says an interesting shot. What happened over here is, Rabban Gamliel didn't invite these people personally. As we see, he didn't know exactly who was supposed to come, who was not. He sent a shliach to invite 7 people. And actually, he meant to tell the shliach, invite 6, because plus himself was already 7. But the shliach misunderstood. And the shliach went and actually invited 7 people. Plus him means 8. And now when he came up, he says, we're 8 people there. There's someone extra, because the shliach invited an extra person. So who amongst them should be Levi? The one that's the lowest level, the one that, they were all invited, but there was someone that was in the lowest level, he should be the one that should leave. And Shmuel HaKatan said, he was humble, and he said, I'm the one that's the lowest of everybody, and therefore I'm going to leave. And the Gemara says, no, that really he's not the one that should leave, because he was in a higher level than everyone else. As the Gemara says, he could have even discussed this, he didn't need anyone else to discuss this matter. He could have figured it out himself. That's the Marsha's pshat in the Gemara here. Okay, now the Gemara is going to bring other cases where we find a similar kind of behavior. So the Gemara says, from where did he learn to do this? Second, where am I here in the Gemara? Kiha the Yosef Rebbe. Similar to what happened once, that Rebbe was sitting, the Kadarish, and Rebbe was teaching, he was darshaning. V'heriach reich shum. And he smelled a strong smell of garlic. And he couldn't handle it. So he said, Amar, Misha achal shum yetze. The one that ate garlic should leave. So Amad Rab Chia got up, v'yatza, and he went out. So Amdu kulam v'yatzu. If Rab Chia went out, such a great person, so everybody else followed him and left as well. Bashachar, the next day in the morning, Motzei Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon, the son of Rebbe, found Reb Chia, and Amalei, and he said to him, you're the one that ate garlic and therefore caused this tsar to my father. Amalei, so he answered him, such a thing will not happen amongst Yidden. Meaning to say, it wasn't me. He wasn't the one that ate the garlic. He got up and left because he didn't want to embarrass the one that did. So when he left, everyone else left along with him. That's the simple pshat of the Gemara. The Marsha says another pshat that the taina that Reb Shimon ben Rebbe had to him is, you caused the whole disruption of my father's share, because when you got up, everyone followed you. And he answered, what could I do? I can't cause another Yid to be embarrassed. It's better to stop the whole share, and that person that ate garlic shouldn't leave alone, that he shouldn't be embarrassed. It's the Marsha's pshat on this. Now, from where did Reb Chia learn this behavior? Rab Meir, he learned it from Rab Meir. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Maisa Bisha Achas. There was a story with a woman, Shabasa le Bismedrish shel Rab Meir. She comes into the Bismedrish where Rab Meir is teaching Torah, Amrullah, and she says to him, Rabbi, Echad mikem kacheni bibiyah. One of the people here was Mekadesh me with biyah, with marital relations, which is a way to be Mekadesh, but Chachamim were Mesaken that you're not allowed to be, you're not supposed to be Mekadesh with biyah. And she's accusing and saying, one of you was Mekadesh me with biyah. So now who's going to get up? Who's going to admit to this? Amad Rab Meir, because of law, get krisis. Rab Meir himself got up and wrote for her a get, and as if it was him, v'nosala, and gave it to her. Now, amdu kasvu kulam v'nosala. They all got up and followed what Rab Meir did and gave her a get, in order not to embarrass the one that did this. Now, Rab Meir meiche gamerla. Where did Rab Meir learn this behavior from? Says the Gemara, Mishmuel HaKatan. He learned it from Shmuel HaKatan because he was before Rab Meir, going back to the story that we brought before, by the case of being Ma'abed Shana. Now, Shmuel HaKatan Me'echen Gamala, where did he learn this behavior from? Mishchanya ben Yechiel, from what it says in the Pasuk in the time of Ezra, when they came up to the second Beis HaMikdash, the Pasuk there says, D'chsiv Vayan Shchanya ben Yechiel mibnei Elam. Shchanya ben Yechiel from Bnei Elam said to Ezra, Vayomel Ezra, Anachnu ma'alnu belekenu. We went against Hashem, Vanoishev Noshim Nachrias Ma'amei Haaretz, and they intermarried with non-Jewish women. Va'ato yesh mikvili Yisrael al zayis. And now there's hope for the Yidden on this, that they came to do tshuva. So Shchaya ben Yechiel did this, and he said this about himself, even though it wasn't true, but he was admitting to this and saying this about himself, not to embarrass the others, that the others should also come and do tshuva. Now, Shchaya ben Yechiel mehecha gamela. From where did Shchaya ben Yechiel learn this kind of behavior? Yeshua, he learned it from what the Eibishter himself tells Yeshua. The pasuk says, "Vayem Hashem Yeshua." Hashem says to Yeshua, "Kum loch, get up. Lama ze atanefal panecha. Why are you sitting here and you fall on your face? Chot Yisrael. The Yidden have sinned." And this is by an Aveda that actually was happened only by one individual. This is the Aveda of Ochin, and still the Eibishter says that all the Yidden have sinned. So Amalafanov, Yeshua asks the Eibishter, Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, Michata, who is the one that sinned? Amaloi, so Hashem answers him, V'chidul Tarani. Am I going to tell you Lashon Hara? Am I going to say to you who's the one that sinned? Hatal Gedoles, make a geidel, a lottery, throw a lottery, and you'll figure out who's the one that sinned. So we see here that the Eibishter is including all the Klal Yisrael in this, and he doesn't want to single out one individual to embarrass him, and therefore from this, Hanhage from the Eibishter, all the rest learn similar. Or you can say that this goes back to the way the Eibishter said in the Chumash to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, the Chsiv, the Pasuk says, and this is by the Mon, when there were a few, the Dasan and Aviram, that went on Shabbos and they did not listen to the halacha that you shouldn't go out and gather the Mon, or they left over from the Mon. And the Eibishter says, Ad Masai me antem, and the Pasuk is referring to all Yidden. Ad Masai me antem lishme mitzvayse v'tereise. So even though it was only a few individuals, but Hashem includes all the Klal Yisrael in this. So therefore, from here we see that these Tanaim took from this kind of behavior. So the Mashal points out, why is the Gemara going through such an arichis to say the source of this kind of behavior? Isn't it an obvious thing they should behave this way, not to embarrass another Yid? So the Mashal says, no, there is a chiddush in this, because you're causing that people should think that you yourself are a sinner in order not to embarrass another Yid. And so much so that everybody else as well is being looked at as sinners, just in order not to embarrass another Yid. And even more in one of the cases there, to interrupt the entire shear of learning for this matter. So therefore the Gemara is bringing the sources, how far this goes. Tana Rabbanan, since we mentioned before Shmuel HaKatan, so the Gemara brings a brayse that will discuss his greatness. So it says, "Nabraisa mishemeis neviim ha'achreinim." When the latest of the neviim passed away, Chagi, Zcharia, and Malachi nistalka Ruach Hakodesh Yisrael. So Ruach Hakodesh and Nevuah was removed from Yidden. V'afal pikein, but nevertheless, they would still have the koyach to listen to a baskel. Now, the expression of baskel, Tosfos here says what baskel means. A baskel means an echo, meaning that you hear a voice coming from above, from the Eibishter, but not directly, but like the voice that comes from an echo. Another pshat in baskel that Mefarshim say is that a baskel means just like a bas. Bas means a recipient, a daughter that is receiving from a parent. So baskel means that it's a secondary voice that comes down l'mayla. It's a weaker revelation. So pamachas once hayimesubim balias beis Guria b'Yerichai. The Chachamim was sitting together in the second floor of Beis Guria, which was in Yerichai. V'nitna aleim baskel min hashamayim, and a baskel comes out from heaven and says, Yesh kan echad sheroi shetishra olav shchina. There's one that is deserving that the Shekhinah should dwell upon him, and others are going to say, Moshe Rabbeinu, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Elosh ein doirei zake lekach. The generation does not merit this. Nasnu chachamim eseineyem behillel hazaken. Everybody looked at the individual. Who was this? This was Hillel hazaken that was with them. Ukeshemeis, and when Hillel passed away, Omru Olav, they said about him, Hey Chassid, hey Onav. Woe to the Chassid that passed away, and to the humble person that passed away. And they also said about him, Talmidoi shel Ezra, that he was a student of Ezra, meaning he, even though he was much later than Ezra, but he followed in Ezra's ways, and therefore he's called the Talmud of Ezra. I think connected to what the Gemara brought before regarding Ezra. Okay, like upon him, another story happened. Shuv pam achas. Another time, a similar incident happened. They were sitting together on a second floor, this time in the city of Yavne. And a baskel comes out from heaven and says, There's an individual amongst you that the Shekhinah can dwell upon him. The generation will not merit this. So everybody looked at Shmuel HaKatan. And Shmuel HaKatan was a student of Hillel, mentioned before. And then when he passed away, Amru Olav, they said about him, Hey Chassid, Hey Anov, that he was a Chassid and he was an Anov. He was humble, Talmidai shel Hillel, and he's the student of Hillel. Okay, so over here in the version of our Gemara, it says the Hey Chassid, Hey Anov in this way. This Gemara is also brought in Saita. And there's a sikha from the Rebbe, Barichis, about the subject. It's in one of the Rebbe's Hadronim, Amesech Saita, which is in Lukut Sichis, Chelik Lamed Ches, Parshas Baal Loischa. And there the Rebbe explains Barichis Gedola, the difference between Hillel and Shmuel HaKatan. They were both very humble and both on a very high level, but nevertheless, Hillel was on a higher level than Shmuel, different levels of Hanova.
Is this the Shmuel that's always brought
in the Gemara?
Shmuel and Rav?
No, that's a later generation. That's ready from the Tkufas, the beginning of Amiroim. This is Shmuel HaKatan from the early Tanoim. Hillel, which is from the early Tanoim.
Okay.
Yeah. Afu Amma b'shas misasai. Shmuel HaKatan, before he passed away, he said, Shimon, so he said about the future, what will happen. And he said, Shimon v'Yishmael, the two great Tanoim. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, which was the Nasi, and Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, which was a Kohen Gadol, Lecharbe, are going to be killed by the sword. The Chavroi and his colleagues Liketola will also be killed in other barbaric manners. This is referring to the Hasara Haruge Malchus, as Rashi brings there, that the other friends refer to Rabbi Akiva and Reb Hanania ben Tradian, that were killed in a very barbaric manner. And Vishar Rama and the rest of the nation, the rest of the Yidden Lebiza are going to be plundered. And V'okan, Sagiyin, Asidin, Lemeisa, Alma, and very difficult tzaris are going to come on the world. Now the Gemara says, "Val Yehuda ben Bava bikshu lo makain." When Yehuda ben Bava was killed, they also wanted to eulogize him, similar to what was said before regarding Hillel and Shmuel HaKatan. But the timing, it was impossible to do this, and the reason was she'em aspidin al aruge malchus. They can't give a eulogy for those that were killed by the king then. And he was, I believe, also from the Asar Aruge Malchus, and they couldn't eulogize him properly, and they had to bury him immediately. Going back now to the subject of being Ma'abed Shana. Tana Rabbanan, and another brayse we learned, Shana Elam Ken Yirtza Nasi. You cannot establish to make a Ibiyar unless the Nasi, the leader of the Bezdin, agrees. Now, Ma'aseh Rabban Gamliel, there was once the story with Rabban Gamliel, which was the Nasi of the Bezdin at that time, that he traveled for the public to go to the government, and some say actually he traveled to the government to ask them about this subject, whether they would agree that you didn't make a Ibiyar. And it took time for him to come back. Now, the Ibru es Hashana, so they had to decide already, and they decided to make the year an Ibiyar, al manas sheyirtze, only on condition that he will agree. Sheyirtze Rabban Gamliel, Rabban Gamliel will agree. Or Keshabar Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Gamliel returned, va'amar reitza ani, and he said, I agree that it should be an Ibiyar, nimtza shana mu'beres, and only then could the year be established as an Ibiyar. Another halacha regarding what are the reasons that we do make an Ibiyar. So here there's many different reasons for doing this. So Tana Rabbanan and Abraisa we learned. We do not establish add another month to make an Ibiyar Elam Kain unless it was necessary to do this for the roads that were ruined during the winter. And this is in order for the people that are coming to Be'ele Regal. They're going to have difficulty to come. And also for the bridges that are ruined. And for the ovens that have to be used to roast the carbon Pesach in them, because then they had these earthenware ovens that were outdoors, and in the winter they can dissolve and they get ruined, and you have to have them fixed and ready on time. And also for the Yidden that are living far away in exile, out of Eretz Yisrael, and they already uprooted, they already began to travel and come to Eretz Yisrael, made their long journey to come to Be'ele Regal, and they still didn't arrive, and they're not going to make it on time. So these are reasons why there would be Ma'abed Shana, add an extra month, so that these matters can be taken care of. Now, Tosfos here actually adds that there's going to be more reasons that we'll see soon. The Gemara will bring up here, and also on Amud Beis, but the reasons that the Gemara brings on Amud Beis will be reasons that you have to have at least two factors to make an Ibiyar. The chiddush about this brayse is that these reasons, each one of these reasons alone, even just one factor, according to Tosfos, is enough to establish an Ibiyar, an extra month of the year. But just the fact that the snow is not enough of a reason that to make an Ibiyar, because people will not stop from coming because of the snow. Not because of the cold. And and not because of the Yidden that live far away, that want to be Be'ele Regal, but they haven't yet uprooted from their homes. So for them, we don't make an Ibiyar. Tana Rabbanan, and another brayse we learned, we do not establish an Ibiyar, not when you have the goats that are very young and small, and you want to bring them, use these for the carbon Pesach, but the fact that they're very young doesn't matter. Or not the sheep that are very small and thin. And the reason is because you can bring a carbon Pesach even from a very small or thin animal. The carbon Pesach is only brought from an animal that's up till a year old, not more than that. But even if it's very small, it can be used. And also the gezalos, the birds that are brought for karbanis, and these are actually brought by the women that give birth, or zavin and zaves, that have to bring karbanis from the birds. So usually people would save all the karbanis they have to bring for the time that they come to be Be'ele Regal. So if you see that the birds are very small, they didn't even fly yet, you can also bring them as a carbon. So therefore, it's not necessary to make an Ibiyar. You can bring from Yainim, from others that are small and young, so it's not a problem.
We know that for an Ibiyar, since it says Pesach has to be...
That's coming. That's coming soon. Let's see. One second. It's coming soon in the Gemara. Here it brings, it's coming soon. Aval Oisan Sa'ad Lashana. However, these reasons that we just said here, that cannot be used alone to establish an Ibiyar, but as we'll see soon, what you just mentioned regarding Chodesh Aviv, there are other reasons that are used to make an Ibiyar, but there you can't use one factor alone. There has to be two factors. So you can use these reasons that I just mentioned here regarding the G'dayim and Tlayim as a second factor to support a reason to make an Ibiyar. So Ketzad, the Gemara gives an example. Rabban Gamliel said in the name of Rabban Gamliel, and he said as follows, or he wrote as follows: that we are letting you know, he's letting the people know about the Ibiyar, the Gezalya Rakichin, that the birds are very small, V'imraya the Arkin, and the sheep are very thin, and V'zimne the Aviv Loimata, and then there was another factor, and this is the main factor to make the Ibiyar, the time of Aviv, when it's the spring and the grain is already ripening, has not arrived yet. They saw that the grain is not ripening yet. And therefore, v'shafres milsa ba'am poi, and therefore the matter seems to be right to me, the leisifas al shata da, and we add it to this year, tlas and yaimin, 30 days. So over here you see that the reason was aviv, chaydish aviv, but that reason alone, that factor alone was not enough. There has to be a second factor, and he combined the fact that the birds or the animals were still small and thin. Okay. Now
they were synchronizing
two reasons here.
With the sun.
Oh yeah, that's the main reason. Okay, we'll get to that soon. Get to Amud Beis. Okay, so now here the Gemara asks on a detail about what it said here. When you add the extra Adar, the extra month of the year, so here the lashon of this notice that Rabban Gamliel gave was that you add 30 days, a full month of 30 days. So the Gemara asks this, Meisvei, in a Braisa it says, Kama Ibur Hashana, when you add another month to the year, so how many days is this month? Shloishim Yom, the Tanna Kama says it's a month of 30 days. Rabban Gamliel, it's a month of 29 days. So Rabban Gamliel himself before said 30 days. So Rav Papa says, according to Rabban Gamliel, Ratzu Chaydesh, Ratzu Shleishim Yom. The extra month of the Adar, it can be sometimes 29 days, it can be 30 days, they can do it either way. Okay, now the Gemara comments on this writing of Rabban Gamliel when he gave out this notice to make an Ibiyar. What's the expression that he used? V'shafres milsa ba'am poi. The matter seems good to me that we should establish a Ibiyar. Says the Gemara, Tochazi, come and see my ikebein takifa the kadmoi. Takifai Kadmai, look at what the difference is between the great and very powerful Tanoim that ruled with a strong hand, that are with the earlier generation, and this is actually the father of Rabban Gamliel, his father Rabban Gamliel, that ruled very, very strictly and very strongly, as Rashi brings the sources from different places in Shas about this. Le'en v'sanoi basroi. To then the next generation, Rabban Gamliel, that was humble, but in the next generation, whatever level of humility he had, does not compare to his father. And the Gemara now brings the source of how when his father, Rabban Gamliel, wrote about the same exact subject, he wrote the message to people about the Ibiyar, he wrote it in a more humble manner. And here the Gemara brings the whole story. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, Ma'aseh Rabban Gamliel, Shohaya Yoshev Agav, Maila B'Har Habayis. Rabban Gamliel was sitting on a step in Har Habayis. V'hoya Yechanan Sefer Halaz, or others are not great is the word laws, Yechanan the scribe, Oimid Lefanav, that was standing in front of Rabban Gamliel, and v'shalish igres chatuches lefanav menachos, and there were 3 pieces of empty documents that were written, that were sitting there, ready for him to write the messages that Rabban Gamliel wanted to send out to different people in different places. So Amalai Rabban Gamliel tells the scribe, Toil igres echada, take one letter, and kseiv, and write in it la'achana b'nei glila, to our brothers that are living in the Galil, in the north of Eretz Yisrael, Galil Ilah, on the upper Galil. And also to our brothers that are living in the lower Galil. And write to them as follows: Shloimchain Yizga, your peace should be in abundance. I'm letting you know the Zman Biura Mata, the time of the beer, the time to get rid of all those different trumas and meisters that you did not yet separate over the last years has come. As Rashi brings here, the halacha of beer meisters is in the 3rd year and the 6th year. That, in other words, the 3rd year of Shemitah and the 6th year of Shemitah, that if you did not yet give the Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, and the Trum and so on, so then by the time Erev Pesach comes, you have to then confess and say, Biyarti HaKadosh Marabayis. You have to get it all out of the house. So he's telling them, reminding them that the time of the beer of meisters has come. Afrusha Meisre, separate the meisters. So mimatone de zeise, and he's telling them, make sure you separate your maises from the pile of olives that you have. And the reason why he spoke to them about the pile of olives specifically is because in the Galil there's a lot of olive trees, a lot of oil and olive trees. So therefore he was telling them about the olives. And the toil igris achada, and then Rabban Gamliel says to the scribe, another letter, and you should prepare a letter, and write to our brothers that are in the south. Shloimchain Yizke, your priest should be in abundance, and I'm notifying you, this man b'yura mata, the time to clean out all those trumas and ma'aser that you didn't give. You have to be mevared from the house. And for them, he said what was relevant for them, which is la'afrusha ma'aser ma'im rishibalaya. Separate the ma'asers from the stalks of the wheat and the grain that you didn't separate ma'asers yet, because in the south they had more from the grains. And then if a toil igris achade, and then a 3rd letter you should take and write to our brothers that are in exile in Bavel, and our brothers that are in exile in Madai, or the Shar Kol Galvas of Yisrael, or Yidden that are in other places in exile, that your peace should be forever. I'm notifying you Then here he was notifying them about the fact that it's going to be a Shana Mu'beres, an Ibiyar. The Gezalya Rakichin, that the birds are still very small, V'imraya Arkin, and the sheep are very thin, and V'zimno da Aviva Loi Mata, and the time of Aviv, of spring, when the grains get ripened, has not arrived yet, and therefore V'shafra Milsa Ba'ampoi, and the matter seems good to me, Uba'ampe Chavirai, and in front of my colleagues as well, Vaisifas al Shatada Yem Klassen. And therefore we're adding the extra month of 30 days to the year. So what is Gemara pointing out here? While Rabban Gamliel said that the matter seems good to me, and he didn't add anything about his colleagues, Rabban Gamliel, his father, that was much more powerful than him, but yet he was humble, and he mentioned that it's me and my colleagues that agreed to make an Ibiyah. So here we see his humility. But the Gemara says the fact that he used this expression doesn't necessarily mean that it was because he had more humility than what we see by Rabban Gamliel, but rather Dilma, possibly the reason he expressed himself this way is Bosa Dabru, after he was removed to be the Nasi. And that's why he had to say that it was me together with my colleagues, which was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and others that were together with him. This is a story in Brachas and other places about Rabban Gamliel that was removed from his position of leadership, and then it was at that point that he was together with others, and therefore he mentioned together with his colleagues. It's a whole story there. I got the mice over there in the Gemara and Brachas about this. Okay. Yeah, okay, so now the Gemara goes back to other additional reasons. These are actually the main reasons, Minatayre, for why we establish an Ibiyar. Tani Rabbanan and the Braisa we learned, Al Shloishu Dvarim Ma'abrim and Sashana. There are 3 reasons that we establish an Ibiyar. Ala Aviv, regarding Aviv, and this is for the Tvua, the grain, to see if it's ripe or not. And Rashi here says, that this is the Pasuk says, Chodesh Aviv. Chodesh Aviv means that you have to actually look at the grains in the field. If this is not by the season of what you mentioned before, the moon and the sun. This is the actual ripening of the grain in the field. So if it's not yet ripe, then you can't. You have to make an ibiyar. Valperes ilan, and regarding the fruits of the trees that we see that are not yet ripening, and the reason for this is because of Shavuos, which is called Yom Bikurim, which is the time that you bring the Bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash. So it has to be the time of Bikurim when the fruits of the trees are ripening already. So if they see that the fruits are not going to be ripening on time, so they would make an ibiyar. Ve alat kufa. And then also regarding the Tkufa, this is the season. If you see that you're coming to Sukkot time and the summer, the Tkufa's Tammuz, the Tkufa of the summer is continuing into Sukkot time, that is, so then you have to make an ibiyar. Because the Pasuk says, Taisus brings it a Pasuk, Gemara later says, this Chag HaOsif Tkufa Sashana. That the Chag HaOsif has to be in the right season of the year, which is already going into fall, not in the summer season. And the same thing also regarding Pesach. If you see that Tkufas Tevis, the winter Tkufa, is going into Pesach time, so then you have to make an ibiyar as well. So that's the Tkufa. Now the Braisa says, Al Shnaya Mehem Me'abrin. If you have a combination of 2 of these reasons, then you establish an ibiyar. But Val Achas Man, if it's only one factor, Ein Ma'abrin. So then you do not establish an ibiyar. Now, the Braisa adds, if one of the reasons that are being used here to establish the Ibiyar is the fact that it's Aviv, meaning that it's not yet Aviv, that the grains in the field are not ripening, Hakel Smechen. Then, when you establish the Ibiyar, everyone is happy. And the reason is because you can't eat from the new grains until you bring the carbon Omer in the Beis HaMikdash. Until that point, it's Asr, which is called the Isser of Chodosh, the new grains that you didn't bring the carbon Omer yet. Now, if Aviv is not one of the reasons, that means that they have the new grains available, and they have to wait an extra month until they can eat them. But if Aviv is one of the reasons, meaning that the grains are not even ripe yet, so then people don't feel like they're losing out, that they have to wait an extra month because the tfuah is not ripe yet anyways. Now Rabban Gamliel said, Alat Kufa, regarding the seasons of the year. So the Gemara right away clarifies what did Rabban Gamliel mean to say when he's saying Alat Kufa. What point is he arguing on? The Shaila was asked, did he mean to say Alat Kufa Smeichin? That if one of the reasons that they're being ma'aber the shana because of the seasons that are off, is he saying that then people will be happy? And Rashi explains, let's say you see that they're being ma'aber the year, not because of the seasons that are off, it's for the other 2 reasons. So then what will end up happening is that you ma'aber the year, and then Sukkot ends up being pushed off later, and Sukkot ends up more deeper into the winter. So then people are not happy about that because Sukkot is colder and the traveling, the Oile Regel is also in the time when it's colder. But if one of the reasons why they're being ma'aber the Shana is because the summer is extending further, and therefore by pushing it off, it's still not going to be that cold, so then people are happier. Or perhaps what Rabban Gamliel meant to say is alat kufa ma'abrin, that regarding this reason of the seasons being off, this is a reason that could be used alone to be ma'abed shana. Even though we said before that with these three reasons you have to have at least two factors to be ma'abed shana, but maybe Rabban Gamliel is saying that only if it's an issue with the grains ripening or the fruits of the trees ripening, there you can't use one of those reasons alone. But regarding tkufa, regarding the season, over there you could use that reason alone to be ma'abed shana. As Rashi says, the reason for this is because the tkufa, according to Rashi, is the only one that is a reason minat Torah to be ma'abed shana. Regarding the ripening of the grains or the fruits of the trees, that's not minat Torah to be ma'abed the year. So therefore, tkufa could be used alone. Tosfos says a different shot that the tkufa and the peiros and the aviv, these are all reasons minat Torah, but the tkufa is the only one which is very crystal clear. There's no discussion about it. Tkufa, you know exactly the cheshbon of the lunar cycle, the solar cycle, and you know exactly how much tkufa is off. So that reason can be used alone to be ma'abed the year. Whereas regarding the ripening of the grains or the fruits, that's something that you can sort of estimate the future. Will it be ready on Pesach time? Will it be ready in Shavuos time? But they can make a mistake about that. So therefore, you have to have two factors for that.
But the ripening of fruits and grain is interlocked with kufa.
Yeah, true. It's that they could be dependent on another, but not necessarily though. It could be other factors, whatever, in the climate, in the season, and the weather. Tana Rabbanan, and another brayso we learned, Al Shalosh Harotzos Ma'abrin Es Hashana. When they're coming to decide whether to make an ibiyar or not, so they have to take into account what's going on in three different parts in the territory in Eretz Yisrael. Yehuda, the area of Yehuda, which is more the center of Eretz Yisrael, or where Yerushalayim is. The Ever HaYarden, the other side of the Yarden. The HaGolil, and then the north of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Al Shtayim Mehen Ma'abrin, if the factors that we mentioned before regarding the grains or regarding the fruits of the tree, that they're not ripe yet, so if there's two areas that are delayed, so then we'll establish an ibiyar. But Bal Achas Mehen, if only one of them is delayed, then Ein Ma'abrin, and that's not enough a reason to be Ma'abr. Ubizman Yehuda Achas Mehen, if Yehuda is one of the areas which is being delayed, is not ripe yet, then Akal Smechen. Everybody is excited that it's Yehuda. Everyone is happy about the fact that we're delaying it because in Yehuda the Tvua is not ready yet. And the reason is She'ein Oimer Ba Elam Yehuda, because the carbon Oimer, which you have to bring the barley, the grain for the carbon, it's Chatchil is supposed to be brought from the area of Yehuda. So if the reason they're delaying the making an ibiyar is because of Yehuda that's not ripe yet, so then it comes out that when they're going to have to bring the carbon aimer, they'll be able to bring the carbon from the Tvua, from Yehuda. But if Yehuda is ripe on time, and it's the other two areas in Eretz Yisrael that are not ripe, so then by the time they're going to want to bring the carbon aimer, so in Yehuda, they're not going to be able to use the Tvua from there. It's going to be overripe already. They're going to have to take from other areas further away, which is not usually the place where the mitzvah is to bring the Tvua from. So therefore, people are happy when they could do the mitzvah l'chatchila to bring the Tvua from Yehuda. And Rashi also says, benegay to the union of Chodosh as well, that people are not so sad about this. Okay, another brayso about this, Tan Rabbanan, we learned in the brayso, Ein Ma'abrin Es Hashanim, Elo b'Yehuda. The place where the Bezdin has to gather and sit in order to establish the ibiyar, there has to be in Yehuda. And according to Rashi over here, Yehuda means that's in Yerushalayim. And in the Beis HaMikdash, that's the place where they have to sit to establish this. If they sat in the north of Eretz Yisrael in Golol, mu'beres. So then b'di'evet, it will be mu'beres as well. But hey, Chananya ish Einai, he said no. If they sat and decided to be ma'abed a year in Golol, eina mu'beres. It does not take effect. Amar Rab Yehuda Bereid Rab Shimon ben Pazi, my time with the Chananya ish Einai. What's the source from what Chananya ish Einai said that it must be done in Yehuda, in Yerushalayim, by the Beis HaMikdash, and not in the north of Eretz Yisrael? Because Amakra, the pasuk says, "L'shichnoi sidrshu uvasashama," referring to the Beis HaMikdash, to the place where the Eibusha dwells. There is where you should come to and darshan and be there, which means kol drisha shata dairish, when you have to darshan, and in this case to figure out the details about whether to be ma'abed the year or not. It should be close where the Eibusha is, there in the Yerushalayim, near the Beis HaMikdash. Tana Rabbanan, in another brayso we learned, Ein Ma'abrin Es Hashana Ela Bayayim. The Ibur Shana has to be done by the Bezdin that sits for this during the day. V'mebru Balayla, if they decided this at nighttime, Ein Mu'beres, it doesn't take effect. And similar, Ve'em Mekashan Es HaChedesh Ela Bayayim, you can't establish the new month, the Ela Bayayim, only by day. V'm Kitchu Balayla, if they establish it by night, Ein Mekudesh, then it does not take effect. Amar Rababes, and Rababes says, "My crow. What's the source for this?" It says in the pasuk, "Tiku b'chayde shofar b'kesel hayom chagenu," that you blow shofar when b'kesel hayom chagenu. So when is this referring to? Ezel chag shachodesh miskasa bay. When do you have a Yom Tif, which is in the beginning of the month when the moon is covered? It refers to Rosh Hashanah. What does the pasuk say right after this? That this is the day, that's a day of chayk and mishpat. Why is it mentioning here the union of mishpat, the judgment of the Bezdin? What it's telling you is, ma mishpat b'yayim, just like the halacha regarding Bezdin that judges people must be during the day, af kiddush hachodesh, so too Rosh Hashanah, which is establishing the new year and the new month, by Yom, has to be done by day. So this is the source regarding Kiddush HaChodesh, and similar also regarding Ibur Hashana, which they're independent on each other, they affect one another, has to also be only during the day.
How do you do Kiddush